Hello and welcome to the Tim and Shipe Show. This episode of our podcast is brought to you by My Auto Care. My Auto Care is revolutionary in the auto care industry. They come to you. That's right. If you're stuck at home on a snowy day, or if you're just at work and don't want to leave and go get an oil change, or if your brakes are bad, whatever it is, check out My Auto Care for your next auto care service repair. They will come to you. They'll drive to you. They have these great vans, trucks, whatever it is that you need. They will come to you and fix up your car and make it look great. Check out myautocare.com. Look them up and schedule your next appointment as soon as you can. You don't want to wait. They have the best customer service that you could possibly imagine. Check them out, myautocare.com, and schedule your next appointment today. We're also brought to you by Affinity Apartment Communities. Affinity Apartment Communities, they make living so comfortable, and they make it so easy to get set up in your next comfortable home. Check out affinityapartmentcommunities.com. Get the application started as soon as possible, or give them a call and ask for Sarah and see about getting in to your next Affinity Apartment Community apartment, or they even have homes, even 3-bedroom homes with garages, places out in the woods, and also they are a part of the Agape Ridge Cabins, and you can schedule your next getaway, your next vacation at the agaperidgecabins.com and get there quick because they are going fast. Go to agaperidgecabins.com to schedule your next getaway, weekend, or a week-long vacation in the beautiful Hocking Hills, Ohio. Check them out, agaperidgecabins.com and affinityapartmentcommunities.com. Let's go.
Could be up to the offensive line. No, Prince's going to throw for it. Got to get it off. They go for the ball game. Touchdown! Touchdown! Michael Jacobs! Holy Buckeye! Tebow straight ahead into the end zone, and the Gators have put this one on ice.
Hello, and welcome to the Tim and Shipe Show. This is a college football podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. We're part of the Press Play Podcast Network, and Tim and I, we are on our last episode of the season. For everyone who has joined us from episode 1 of season 1 until now, thank you all so much. And if you're a newcomer, we love you too. Mwah! Thank you so much to our fans and everyone who supported us throughout the year. And thank you so much to our sponsors, the Affinity Apartment Communities and the My Auto Care company. Thank you all so much. We couldn't do this without you, and we appreciate you so much. Special thanks from Tim and I as we close out the season. But before we do that, we have one more episode to get to. Tim's going to tell us all about the championship because I refused to watch because I hated the idea of these two teams going against each other. And from what I saw on the score, there's a good reason why I hated the idea of these two teams going head-to-head. Tim, tell us a little about the game. What did you see? Why did Clemson fail so badly in such a fantastic fashion? Go.
Well, first of all, it actually was a much closer game than the final score showed. I think you probably know
every
that.
Loser ever. Yeah.
Wow. So much bitterness. You should watch the game, actually. It was actually a fun game to watch. Clemson was ahead early. They actually had a 7-0 lead. They were driving. They were controlling the ball. Even in the second quarter, it was weird because it seemed like Clemson had all the momentum. They were doing really well. And then LSU just woke up. It's like they just took over. At the end of the second quarter, it was like Clemson just kind of softened up a little bit, I guess. Like they were almost like, all right, well, we'll just wait till the second half and we'll take care of this. And LSU took advantage and ended up scoring 3 touchdowns in the second quarter to take a 28-17 lead going into the half. So at that point, it was like, oh, what's going to happen here? And then Clemson came out in the second half. They scored a touchdown. They had 25 points at that point, so it was 28-25. And at that point, LSU just shut them down. LSU didn't let them score another point after that. And it was there. Of course, there were both teams had calls going against them, and I saw people posting. Honestly, I saw Buckeye fans posting about how
Clemson fans were crying.
No. I saw Buckeye fans complaining about the refs cheering, helping Clemson out again. I was like, what are you guys talking about? For me, it was completely even. Both teams had calls that could have gone the other way.
Yeah.
I have no complaints specifically with the refs this game because I do feel like at least it was consistent. They weren't great, but they were consistently not great.
Yeah.
So it wasn't, incredibly motivating for one team or the other to help them win the game. So like I said, I heard Buckeye fans complaining about how Clemson was had the refs in their pockets again, and it was ridiculous. People are just crazy like that sometimes. But I don't know. It was fine. Like I said, going into this game, I was excited to watch it just to see what would happen. It was a fun game. It didn't disappoint. 42-25 final, but the game was a lot more exciting than that number sounds. Like it was actually it was a fun, entertaining game. I was trying so hard to stay up and watch it. I got up super early that day, like 4 a.m. that day. So I was trying to watch it. The game didn't get over till like 1 something in the morning.
Yeah.
So I found myself like dozing off and like, no, I can't fall asleep. I gotta watch this game. So I did. I made it through. I dozed off a couple times and wake up like, what did I miss? Missed a couple plays, but it was a fun game.
I think they do have to do something about these 8:00 start times on these championship games. The East Coast, man, we just can't. We can't do these 1:00 on Monday nights. I stayed up just so I could see the final score because I was kind of like I was watching shows with my wife and checking on the scores at the same time just to kind of see it because I was boycotting it. Didn't want to give the show my ratings when I feel like Ohio State should have been there. But what I want to talk about is do you think Ohio State matched up better against LSU than Clemson?
Honestly, I don't think it mattered. The
Really?
way Joe Burrow was locked in, like I said, it was a little bit slow. I think the difference may have been Ohio State may have been able to take advantage earlier on in the game, like they did against Clemson. That would have been their main opportunity. But I think that Joe Burrow with his 6 touchdowns in this game, he was just out of this world this year, start to finish. He really
great.
never had a moment a moment of weakness, a moment of doubt, uncertainty, anything like that. Like he was consistently great all season long, start to finish. Ironically, the closest game of his whole season was against Florida when they were down in the third quarter. Outside of that, they've pretty much start to finish one of the most dominating performances I think I've ever seen from a team. Very impressive.
Yeah, what makes this even harder is the fact that I obviously I do think that Ohio State matched up better. I think our cornerbacks could have shut down their wide receivers. I think Ohio State has better DBs than what Clemson does. And I think that our defensive backs would have made it a lot more fun. And I think America was robbed because I think that's the game that everybody wanted to see. Joe Burrow up against his his alma mater, honestly, because he graduated from Ohio State. So I think that America was robbed by not having Ohio State there. And I think it would have been a way better game. And I think it would have been just like the Ohio State-Clemson game. I think it would have come down to a last possession. Who had the ball last? Just like the Ohio State-Clemson, who had the ball last should have won the last game, but because of a misread, we didn't. So I think that's what makes that loss to Clemson even harder is that I think America was robbed. So,
well, of course, you're going to say that as a Buckeye fan who didn't watch the championship game. You're going to say that naturally.
Yeah.
But I think it was good to see the dynamic of this Clemson team who pretends to be an underdog, but had won 2 of the last 3 championships.
Yeah, old Clemson. Yeah.
Yeah, Trevor Lawrence, who had never lost a game going into this championship game. So there were a lot of kind of sidebar
storylines to follow.
Yeah. So it made it really interesting and really, like I said, I don't think – it may have been a little bit closer if Ohio State had been in, but I really don't think it would have mattered. I think that LSU was just that good this year.
Yeah.
Having said that, they lost their offensive coordinator and their defensive coordinator now to other places, one going to the NFL, one going to taking a head coach position in college. So it's going to be interesting to see without Joe Burrow, without 2 of their coordinators coming in next year, what is LSU going to be?
Yeah. I think that LSU will not be in the top 10 next year. If I'm
to start the year, in the year.
In the year. I think they'll be I think they'll be in the top 10 to start the year just because they're the defending champs. But I think they'll probably fall to around 15, 16, 17. They'll probably be like the 3rd or 4th best team in the SEC next year is what I'm thinking.
I think they'll be the 3rd best team in the SEC West next year behind Auburn and Alabama. I do.
Maybe. Yeah, there's a really good chance of that.
So, I agree with what you're saying. Like, I don't think they're going to be able to maintain. I saw today they had 9 players who are going pro. So they're losing a lot coming into next season.
Yeah. Can you see Ed Orgeron being like a Les Miles? Like won a championship and then falls off like the next 3 or 4 years?
hangs on
And
to that for 8 seasons before he gets
Right.
fired.
Right.
Possibly. Yeah.
I could kind of see that happening.
I can see that for sure. Yeah, definitely a possibility for him. Good for him. Let's do it. Let's do it, Ed.
All right. So let's Tim, you said you did a Power 5 redesign today. So walk us through that. So to remind our listeners, a Power 5 redesign is Tim and I, we had an idea, mostly Tim, had an idea to redesign the Power 5. And the way that's going to work is it's going to look a lot like the soccer programs where the 3 worst teams in the Power 5, they fall off and they go to like these minor league teams. Is that how you would describe them? Kind of like minor league conference, I guess. And so they fall off. And so what this would do was create a precedence against teams like Rutgers and against teams like Vanderbilt, who are just there to cash a paycheck. They're not there to win football games. And so if you don't win football games, if you're one of the worst 3 in the conference, you fall off, and the best 3 in your minor league conference come up, right?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is.
Okay. And so, Tim, you've mapped out this entirely for us, right? To close out our season. All right, let's hear it.
I took the time to do this just for our last episode specifically. Super excited about it. So, so what happens is, like you said, the bottom 3 teams from the Power 5 conferences get relegated to the Group of 5 conference that's associated with theirs.
Okay.
So, for example, the ACC is now associated with the American Athletic Conference.
AAC.
And so what would happen is this season, Cincinnati, UCF, and Memphis would get promoted to the ACC.
Would there be a little cash bonus, like to invest in your programs?
It's a great question. So what happens is the 3 teams that get relegated to the AAC, the 3 teams that get promoted get their share of the ACC earnings.
That's good.
So the teams that get dropped down, it's a huge loss for them. They lose tons of money. All around, it's a huge loss for them. One thing I did not take the time to do, which I'm going to do right now, and I'm not stalling at all, in case you're wondering.
No, of course not. Of course not.
What I'm not doing is stalling. I'm actually looking at which teams would have been relegated down to the AAC and from the ACC.
Okay.
So it looks like we would have NC State, Syracuse, and Georgia Tech would have dropped to the AAC.
Yeah,
and
I think
Cincinnati
everybody would be okay with that. I think Cincinnati, Memphis, and who was the other one?
UCF.
Yeah, UCF. I think they've earned it. Maybe not UCF as much as Cincinnati, but they definitely this last season have earned to be a Power 5 contender, I think.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. So so it'd be NC State, Syracuse, Georgia Tech this season dropping. They're out of the ACC. They don't get those earnings. Those, like I said, Cincinnati, UCF, Memphis get their earnings for this season. So it's amazing. So it helps them get their, there are obviously these teams coming up. They're already at a disadvantage, but it gives an opportunity to get themselves into a position to put themselves in a level playing field. And those teams who just hover around, they're not relevant anymore. And so they have to work even harder to try to become relevant. Okay. So the next conference would be the SEC. The SEC would now be paired with a Group of 5 Sun Belt Conference. Now, obviously, all 5 of the Power 5 and the Group of 5, they are matched up. They're paired based on geography.
Right.
So as close as we could to where they are already.
Okay.
So for the Sun Belt, the 3 teams that get promoted would be the Appalachian State, which is consistently year in and year out, if not one of the best, then the best Group of 5 team. Appalachian State, University of Louisiana, and Georgia Southern this season will be the 3 teams that got promoted.
Okay.
And then on the other side, we have Arkansas, Mississippi, and Vanderbilt would have been demoted.
Love it.
So, I mean, it makes sense. It's great. And like Arkansas has been bad for a couple of years, and Vanderbilt consistently has not been good for several years. So now they're dropped. They're out. I mean, it's a motivation for them to work harder and to try to be good.
Yep.
So for the Big Ten, we're looking at the 3 teams that get promoted into the Big Ten. It would be the Mid-American Conference, which makes sense because they're all mostly Midwest schools. For the Mid-American promotion would be Miami, Ohio, Central Michigan, and Western Michigan would all get promotions to the Big Ten. And that's not super big names, but it's, they have to work their way up. They have to earn it. But I think your argument could be, would you rather have them or would you rather have Rutgers, Northwestern, and Maryland?
Northwestern is typically at least middle of the pack in the Big Ten. What a bad year they had. They're terrible.
They had a
but-
terrible year. They're 1-8 in the conference.
Oof,
And that's really, that hurt them a ton.
brutal.
So they're 3-9 team overall, just terrible.
Ugh,
So sorry Northwestern,
Yeah.
you can't have that kind of year and hope to survive. You're out.
that's true.
So
Wow.
that's it. So they get replaced again by Miami, Ohio, Central Michigan, and Western Michigan. Now the argument against this whole system is going to be, how is the Big Ten going to make up this money with these teams? But you
Yeah.
look at it, and one of these teams is going to be able to maintain
Be able to
staying in
hang
that
on.
conference.
Yeah.
Exactly. So over time, they're going to build a popularity. They're going to build a fan base, and the money's going to balance out. Because let's be honest, how much money is Rutgers really bringing into the conference right now?
Right.
They're earning the money from the other teams in the conference way more than they're actually earning it themselves.
Right.
So it's just amazing. I can't wait to see this happen. It's going to happen. It's gonna be
You think it's
great.
going to happen?
No, I wish it would, but no,
I
it
think
won't.
yeah.
It's a dream. So for the Big 12 conference, they would be paired up with Conference USA.
Okay.
So for them, the 3 teams that would get demoted, this is a rough one actually. Of all the ones, I think this might be the most surprising, because you have Kansas, which is not surprising, Texas Tech, and then TCU, who has been fairly consistently good
Yeah.
in the Big 12. They're out this year.
Wow.
They're done. They would get demoted, and in their place would be Florida Atlantic, Marshall, and UAB would get the nod to
Okay.
jump up
I
into
like
the Big
those.
12. Which, to be honest, I think there's more parity in these two conferences than any other one. I think FAU, Marshall, UAB, I think you could step in and be like, oh, they weren't already in the Big 12? I just don't think there's that much of a loss
Right.
overall. So then we jump in, the last one is the Pac-12. So Pac-12, of course, we matched up with the Mountain West. Makes the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
So the 3 teams getting promoted from the Mountain West will be Boise State, Air Force, and Utah State.
Okay.
Now this one also surprised me a little bit, because you have Arizona getting demoted, which isn't shocking. Colorado gets demoted, but Stanford this year actually would get a demotion. And that's
wow.
another one that is pretty surprising overall.
Yeah.
So Arizona, Colorado, Stanford get replaced by Boise State, Air Force, and Utah State. And there you go. Either you make it in the top 7 to 10 teams of your conference, or you're out. Like you're getting demoted. You have to find a way to earn your way back into a Power 5 conference, and until you do that, you're losing millions of dollars for your school.
Yeah. Here's kind of I would like to see it. My dream. I like this a lot, but my dream would be to cut it down from a Power 5 to a Power 4. I don't think and I would like to dissolve the Big 12 and disperse them amongst the other conferences. Like
That's fine.
Because
Yeah.
I think, and then I think at that point you can take the conference champions a little bit better. I think it's way easier to take conference championships, and I think it's easier to move to an 8-team playoff if you do it that way. So I'd like the Big 12 or the Pac-12, either one. You could do away with either, and disperse them amongst the other conferences.
Yeah, I don't think they'll ever disperse the Pac-12 just because they're the only thing the West Coast has.
Right.
So I think that they would. The Big 12 makes the most sense. They're the fewest teams,
Mhm.
so they only have 2 real power schools in that conference.
Mhm.
So you take Oklahoma and Texas out, they really have nothing left.
Nobody. Yeah.
So I love that idea. And then you have your 4 automatic bids,
Mhm.
and then the other 4 are based on the committee.
Yeah.
So let's do it. Let's make that
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah, let's make that happen. So I love it. Any other thoughts on this year's playoffs? How it could have been done better? Would you have taken Oklahoma after seeing all the bowl games? Would you have left Oklahoma in, or is there another team who you think was more deserving?
I mean, I don't think Oklahoma was the best team, but I don't think the committee had a choice. I think that the way it kind of played out.
Yeah, I get it. But now that the season's over, and and I understand that we had to put Oklahoma in there, but looking at it objectively now, looking at how the bowl games finished, do you think there was another team who was the 4th best team besides Oklahoma?
To be honest, I really don't think it mattered. I think this year there were 3 teams and everybody else.
Yeah.
So I don't think it really mattered. Like I think it would have been the same
no matter
situation.
Who you put in there.
Georgia, Oregon. I don't think it mattered. I think it would have been the same result this season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so too. I think and speaking of one team and everybody else, right now the ACC is Clemson and everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
The like we just mentioned, the Big 12 is Oklahoma, Texas, and everyone else, and it's almost Oklahoma and everybody else. The way Texas is just imploding. And then the Pac-12, man, who was good in the Pac-12? Oregon.
It's rotated. Oregon, Washington, sort of.
Washington, but
Stanford had a couple years where they were okay.
Yeah.
No one's significant though.
And so the parity in college football is leaving, and in the Big Ten, it's not getting better. You see Ohio State, we really take whatever players we want from the surrounding states. We got Julian Fleming from Pennsylvania. We have several Michigan players. I think the gap is getting wider and wider, and I'm worried that the Big Ten is turning into the ACC, where it's going to be Ohio State and everybody else for several years. And I think the gap is just getting wider and wider and wider. And so next year, when we look at Ohio State, I am really, really excited because I think this team is going to be hungry. I think it's all going to be business. I think it's going to be these teams are in the way of our ultimate goal. And I really like what I'm looking at going into next season. Shaun Wade was huge coming back for Ohio State to have a leader in the defensive back because everyone else is going to be fresh starters. And so to have Shaun Wade there as a leadership role, and then you have Justin Fields, which, fun fact, of all the time that Ryan Day has spent at Ohio State, this is the first time that he's had a returning quarterback after one season. So this will be his first returning quarterback who's going to be able to latch on and take a leadership role as a quarterback. Even with a new quarterback coach, I think Justin Fields is going to be fine. And we have a deeper room, a quarterback room. We have two freshmen coming in who are awesome. C.J. Stroud's a 5-star quarterback, and then Jack Miller is a high 4-star quarterback. So our quarterback room is better, our backups are better, and it's going to be a fun year. And so we have just athletes all over the field. I think it's going to be all business all the way to the playoffs next year. I see nothing holding us back. Tim, What about Florida?
Well, I think actually the SEC is the conference that has the most parity in college football coming in next year. Alabama showed some weaknesses this season. Tua's gone. LSU, like we talked about earlier, they've lost a lot this season. Yeah. They brought in Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach into the conference this year. So they're trying, the conference as a whole is bringing in some bigger name coaches to try to develop some of those schools. I think Florida has a legitimate chance not only to win the SEC East, but to definitely contend for the conference as a whole. We talked about this a couple weeks ago where their schedule coming into next year is not that difficult. Overall, there's no reason why they shouldn't be able to run the table. I think that Georgia might be the biggest contest, but Georgia lost their entire offensive line, their quarterback. They got a transfer from Wake Forest. I don't know how good he's going to be with the rest of this team. Their best wide receivers, some of the better defensive players. This is Florida's best opportunity they've had in a really long time to win the SEC and get into the playoffs. So I'm just really excited to see where they go in the future. They've gotten almost every player they were going after for recruiting this season. They've gotten. The biggest question is going to be, is it Kyle Trask or Emory Jones? And I know you've questioned Emory Jones a lot. A lot of people have. But I've heard some big name, even ESPN analysts and other professional sports analysts who are looking at pregame statistics, but viewing pregame stuff and saying, I didn't know Emory Jones could throw like that. I didn't know his arm was that strong. My concern with Kyle Trask is, as I've taken the last couple of weeks to kind of evaluate Florida in their season, Kyle Trask was a big unknown. I think as the season has progressed, people have started to sort of figure out who Kyle Trask is. Teams have kind of had enough tape to kind of watch him. I don't think his arm is strong enough to make those deep throws. And that's my biggest concern for him. I know Emory Jones has that arm. He doesn't throw the ball a lot, but he has the arm to do it. The accuracy is his biggest thing. I think that's what they're going to be working on this entire offseason with him to get him to where he needs to be. I think that it's Kyle Trask's job to lose at this point, but I think Emory Jones is going to be much closer behind him than people expect. And either way, I think it's going to be a good situation. So I think it's going to be a really good opportunity for Florida to take advantage of a little bit of a down SEC East and a much more competitive across the board SEC conference. And I'm calling it right now, this is the year Florida makes it to the college football playoff.
I hope you're right. So I know we gave our top 4 last week, but mine's actually changed from not last week, but last episode to this episode. So do you want to do our top 4s to close out the season?
Sure.
Okay. And this is going into next season. This is where I think they're going to be going into next season, not where they finish the season. Does that make sense? Because we all know where they finish the season. And so who's your number 1? Do you want to go? I'll go first. Ohio State's my number 1.
Okay. Well, I don't know if I have a top 4 necessarily in that order, but I'm just saying not top 4 as far as like these teams are going to be in the top 4.
Yeah. To start the season.
I think to start the season, yeah.
Okay.
My first one would be Clemson.
Why?
Well, based on what they're bringing back, what they have going for them, their coach,
Aren't they losing
their
a lot?
staff, their conference. No, not really. I think they're losing 4 or 5 players.
Okay.
So they're bringing back quite a bit actually. They lost a ton last year, and look what they still did.
Yeah.
Doing the national championship and losing. But what they're bringing in as far as recruiting and their coaching staff and their quarterback coming back, I'm going to keep them in the top 4 for sure.
Well, yeah, they're number 2 for me, just because I think it's going to be those 2 teams in the championship, and I think we're in for an awesome championship game. If those 2 get another shot, whether it be in the first round of the playoffs, I think Ohio State is just that's their goal next year is to play Clemson one way or another. They want another shot. So I pray, please put them in the championship game. It'll be such a fun season, such a fun game to watch. Anyway.
Well, I also have Clemson, Ohio State. I'll put Ohio State as my second team in there.
Hey.
It's not necessarily in that order, but top 4 as far as 4 teams getting in. But I don't think Ohio State wants anything to do with Clemson. Their experience against that team has not gone well for them. But I have both of them definitely getting into the playoff next year.
Okay. And I'll give you one here, Tim. I'm going to put Florida at my number 3 spot.
All right.
You're welcome. You've talked them up. I'm on board as of right now.
I will as well. And I think with what's coming into Florida next year, that they not only will be competitive to get to the top 4, but I think that they will be on a playing field with both of those top 2 teams, the other teams that we mentioned so far.
Yep. And number 4. Now, I think number 4. So from our top 10s, LSU was kind of the dark horse, right? That kind of came out of nowhere and took over. Do you have a team like that going into next year?
You know, it's tough for me.
It is tough.
Looking at next year, because, for example, Oregon plays Ohio State next year. So I don't think Oregon is going to be in the playoff next year. I think they're going to lose to Ohio State. I think they're out already of competition. Oklahoma has to find a quarterback again. I don't think they're going to be able to work the magic. I don't think the committee believes in them. So I don't think that they're going to lose somewhere along the way, and they're not going to be in. Okay. So just giving you a couple examples of what I expect. One team I'm going to put in there that I think is a dark horse, not because I believe in them, but I believe that the committee is going to put them in, and that's going to be Notre Dame.
You know, I thought about Notre Dame. They were on the cusp of being my dark horse, but I think in complete Notre Dame fashion, they are going to lose 2 or 3 games that they should win.
I hope you're right.
Yeah. So my dark horse, and I think you're going to be shocked by this, maybe not, but my dark horse is going to be Minnesota going into next year. I believe in PJ Fleck, and I think I think they're going to be undefeated going into the championship game against Ohio State. And then I think they're going to lose to Ohio State, but I think they're going to have enough going into the season, and Ohio State's going to be ranked number 1 where they're still going to get in the playoffs. That's my prediction for next year, that it's going to be Minnesota as the number 4 team, because I think PJ Fleck is the real deal as a coach. To see what he did in one season with Minnesota this year, think about having a whole nother season to implement his stuff. So,
well, here's my concern with Minnesota. Their schedule next year.
Yeah.
Outside of the Wisconsin game, they play Wisconsin and they play Michigan. Mm-hmm. Outside of that, they don't really have anyone they're playing that stands out.
Exactly.
So I think that hurts them, is my point. I think that
you can look at it both ways.
They're going to be the team that getting into the conference championship isn't good enough. If they can't beat Ohio State,
Yeah.
they don't get in.
Maybe. It depends on how you win against Michigan and Wisconsin.
Well, in comparison, looking at Notre Dame's schedule, I don't think they're going to win in the playoff, but they've shown before they can get to the playoff. They lost to Alabama in the national championship before the playoff was started, like 2013, whatever year that was. They got blown out.
Yeah, 2012, 2013.
Yeah.
Season.
Yeah. So
then they got blown out in the playoffs. Like, I think
yes, it was a couple years ago.
I think the committee's hesitant. Will be hesitant to put Oklahoma in. They have got to dominate. Oklahoma and Notre Dame, I think, have to go undefeated and look really good doing it to get back in the playoff.
Here's the thing: money talks. So here's what's going to get Notre Dame into it. There's only one team that I legitimately see being an issue for them, and that they actually played Clemson this year.
Yeah.
So they're going to lose to Clemson, but I think it's going to be closer than people are expecting. This is going to be their one loss, but they're going to say, you know what, they did really well. They also played Wisconsin, but I think they're going to beat Wisconsin this year.
Yeah.
I think Wisconsin's going to be down a little bit this year. I think it'll be a little overrated. So that's they're going to say, well, they beat Wisconsin. They beat Stanford. They beat USC. They lost to Clemson in a close game. Yeah, they don't have a conference championship. Let's let them in. And that's what's going to happen. That's what's going to.
I don't think so. I understand the money talks argument, but they left Ohio State out and put other people in. So money's not talking as loud as we think because there's not many teams more lucrative than Ohio State.
But we're not talking about losing to Purdue in a blowout. We're talking about losing to Clemson in a close game.
It won't be a close game. I don't think Brian Kelly's can get over that hump.
Well, I was saying that in my scenario, it was a close game. That's the difference.
Okay. I don't know. It's going to be a fun season. I think that there's going to be parity in the SEC. Will Alabama be back? Will Alabama continue to drop? If they don't make the conference championship again, I think the fans are going to start getting antsy with Saban even. As much as he gets paid and the standard that he has set for himself may start to hurt him a little bit.
Sure.
And so I think the parity is going to be in the SEC and the parity is going to be in Pac-12. I don't think there's going to be much parity in the Big Ten or the ACC.
Agreed.
All right. Any final thoughts, comments on the season, Tim, before we close out our season 2 of the Tim and Shipe Show?
No, not really. I mean, I'm just excited to see. As usual, I feel like the offseason is going to fly by. Let's get through the rest of quote-unquote winter. It's like 80 degrees here right now, but
it's like 50 here in Ohio.
That's weird.
Nice.
Let's just get through winter and summer and get ready for football again in the fall.
Season. Yeah, 8 months, 9 months, something. I mean, it'll be here
close.
before we know it.
Yep.
And we'll be back before you know it. I'm going to take a hiatus from Facebook. This will be the last post that we make. So to our fans, our family who's listening, we love you all so much. Thank you so much for being part of our show all season long. And to our sponsors and to the Press Play Podcast Network, we are so grateful and thankful for all of you. We love you all so much. He's Tim Jones. I'm Aaron Shipe. This is the Tim and Shipe Show. That's the wrap on season 2. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll catch you next season.
And go Gators.